Hello there and welcome back. We are halfway or partway through our session on business letter writing. How are you doing so far? I do hope that you've been following some of the guidelines that we've brought up in this past two sessions and that you are on the way to becoming a better letter writer and also becoming more professional and looking more professional to your business colleagues and your customers, etc. That's not a bad thing indeed. It's a very good result that you can gain or a benefit you can receive from being a very good letter writer. We might now take a look at other forms of letters. Here we are with a complaint letter. It could be that you need to write a complaint letter at some time or another, perhaps to a vendor or perhaps to someone who has not provided you with the right information, etc., and it's caused serious problems. There could be many reasons why indeed there are complaint letters. You may receive complaint letters possibly as well, hopefully not too many, but that is a reality that you will be receiving complaint letters from time to time. But a complaint letter also is sometimes necessary for you to write to send out to people who have not actually provided full service, etc., to your needs as well, be it on a personal level or be it to your company who also has external customers and external vendors, etc. So when we look at complaint letters, do we actually make it a real complaining letter? This is something you do need to think about. And therefore you do need to tone down your reactions. You may be feeling very hot-headed about something or very angry indeed about something. And maybe you have perfect cause to be angry. But don't forget that a complaint letter also is unique in business letter writing. So therefore, a complaint letter is also written in the business letter format. And the main idea behind a complaint letter is to keep it short and very to the point, so that the reader is going to understand it very, very clearly and read all parts of it. It is, don't forget, a complaint, and therefore you want to be heard. You want your case, you want your story to be heard in entirety. Not just 50%, but you want 80% attention to your argument and your complaint. If you write a very thorough and long-winded 10-page, 7-page complaint letter, chances are that the person who receives that will sit down and maybe put those pieces of paper on the table and forget about them because it's just too long. So it's highly unlikely that they will read all of the 7 pages or the 10 pages that you spent hours going through, that you spent a lot of time putting your whole effort into being angry at them, and you find that they will not really even read all of those pages. So do you want that? Do you really want that? Of course you don't. So let's look at the guidelines and the best ways to approach complaint letters. They should, if you do have a complaint letter about customer service or consumer affairs because something has been wrongly advertised, for example, they should be addressed to the department or the head office if there's no particular department. The address and contact information of the customer service department should be available on any company's products or website. This is just a point to highlight to you. It may be that you're not writing to a particular company about a product and complaining about that, but always seek out addresses and names of people if you can, as I've said before, by checking the web and coming up with the correct addresses and who you need to address things to. So just remember, for this particular example, make sure that you do address complaints for products or services to customer or consumer affairs departments. In your case, if you are writing a letter of complaint on behalf of the company, then you would ensure that it goes to the particular person that you're dealing with, and you would know their specifics anyway in terms of who they are and their positions, etc. And you would perhaps CC that complaint to someone in a higher up position, depending on the nature of the case and complaint. So let's take a look at complaint letter writing. In the first paragraph, you really do need to identify the issue and any relevant information that you need or you think is important. Be sure to include the following information only if it's applicable to your situation. Okay? So don't forget you need the date, the time of the issue. Make sure you highlight this. Whenever the complaint happened about this particular issue, you have to have the accurate information about the time it happened and the date it happened, and where it happened, the location, the name of the person, for example, on duty, or the name of the person who was involved at the time. You need to highlight the name of the product, what the actual problem was, your particular account number or reference number if you have one, or model number or price or warranty information, etc. All of these particulars. Now you can relate that to your particular company's viewpoint and product of complaint as well. All of these particulars do need to be highlighted in the first paragraph. Don't leave it till the end or halfway through. Make sure that you make it very defined and very clear right in the first part. That is where the reader begins to read. They don't read from the bottom up. They're reading from the first paragraph down, so catch them straight away. Don't miss this chance. So depending on the situation, you put in every bit of information about the particular issue of complaint. And when you are putting this in this particular part, you would therefore stick with the facts and stop putting your emotions into it. If you add your emotions in there, you might find that 80% of the content of that first paragraph is talking about your emotions rather than talking about the specifics. And what happens? You lose your reader. They are less inclined to want to help you, less inclined to read on. They may feel you're getting angry with them, and therefore they're thinking perhaps they're going to be angry back because you're writing in a very emotional way. In the next paragraph, the idea here is to really tell them what you would like to have done to resolve the situation. This is what your viewpoint is of the whole thing. You've gotten rid of the facts, you've gotten rid of the specifics and the issue in the first part. Now, in the second paragraph, you want to write down things like, for example, if you receive poor service, you could request an apology or a coupon that will refund you some money or let you buy another product. For example, if a product malfunctioned, you could, in this second paragraph, request that you exchange it for a new one or request a refund. So in this second paragraph is what your solution should be. Don't ramble on anymore about how angry you are or upset you are or how much you're going to go to another supplier or another service provider. Don't ramble on. Try to come up with a solution. This is the key point. And then in the last paragraph, here you should thank the reader for the time that they've given you. Now, you may not feel like doing that. You may feel really angry with them and you don't really want to be nice to them. But do remember, if you are writing particularly on behalf of your company, you do need to be very, very courteous at all times. And indeed, if you are writing from a personal point of view, you never know when you may need that company to help you in the future, or you may want to buy their products in the future. So you could also throw in some short or brief compliments about something that you did like about their company's product or service. This, in a way, lets them understand, yes, of course, you are annoyed, you want a solution to the problem, and in the final last paragraph, compliment them by saying that in the past, products have been very, very well put together. They have not given you any problem, and that you've always enjoyed working with them and had great service from their customer service department, and that you look forward to getting over this particular issue so you can continue your relationship. These are examples of being very positive. These are examples of showing your assertiveness, but also being very correct and looking very professional. Remember who it is that you're writing this letter for and on behalf of. So if it is your company, then you come away looking professional in the eyes of the reader. Don't forget to always include your telephone number and email address so that you can be contacted as soon as possible. Sometimes we put ASAP in letter writing as well. That's a very direct and highlighted point to say, please contact as soon as possible, if necessary. And do, of course, keep a copy of the letter for yourself and include photocopies of any relevant documents that you want to send with that letter. Sometimes you need to send evidence or samples of or copies of receipts, samples of the product that has been broken as well. You might need to mail that to them. So be sure to keep a copy of the letter if it's a personal complaint, but also you would do that anyway if you are writing on behalf of your company. Here we have a sample of a complaint letter. And in this particular letter, we see it's following the format, flush left to the side, and it is addressed to the customer service department. It could be that the writer doesn't have the name of the person there, so they have said, "Dear Sir" or "Madam." So we have 3 paragraphs. The first paragraph details the particular issue. And the issue here is a new pair of soccer cleats. And they've highlighted the number and when they bought them and from where. It highlights the actual issue, what the point of the complaint is. It means that the cleats were actually used when they were open. They were not brand new. They had dirt all over them, and that there was a small tear in the front part. It highlights the order number of this particular product. So you can see very clearly the first paragraph is doing its job. It is putting all the specific information about the issue right there up front. So that means the reader immediately knows what the problem is. Next we come to the second paragraph of the particular complaint. And here this paragraph is meant to resolve the problem. It's meant to hold your solution to how to fix this concern. So in this case, Mr. Ken Thomas says, in order to solve this problem, I'd like you to credit the account for the amount charged for these particular cleats. And he already went out and bought a new pair, so it means that he has 2 pairs, so he doesn't need the ones that originally came from that particular company. So he just wants a credit to his account. Quite simple and quite an easy solution. That is what he wants. So now the reader, the customer service department, understand exactly the thinking of the complainer and what kind of solution they are looking for. He hasn't gone off and rambled and gone angry and said that he's never ever going to use their services again because he received dirty things in the mail and everything was broken, etc. He's not rambling on like that. He's being courteous and he's being professional in a personal sense. In the third paragraph, we can find here that he has thanked them for the time to read this letter. This is a very nice way of thanking the reader for taking time. So thank you for taking the time to read this letter. He's also highlighting here that in the past he has been a very satisfied customer, and that this actually is the first time he's encountered a problem. Now, when he says that, the reader then will probably realize, oh yes, Mr. Thomas has been a very good customer. So they will be more inclined then to service his complaint in a very positive way. He is not a complainer. He is not a difficult customer. And remember this, people will remember whether you are difficult or not in the past. And that will add to how much effort they put into actually solving your problem. This is a reality, unfortunately, but it does happen. So when you are writing your letters, and in this third paragraph, closing off the letter, this writer compliments the company, and it's a valid compliment, and has said, if you need to reach me, he's given the exact details. Sincerely, and then he signs off. So here we do have a complaint letter that is to the point. It's following the guidelines that are set out with the first, second and third paragraphs. And chances are that it will get a very good response from the cool sports company where he is sending the complaint to. So do remember, your image is reflected every time you put something in writing. It's true, isn't it? Do you believe me? You will really understand this when you begin to formally put your complaints in writing. So take these guidelines and follow them very, very closely. This is a complaint letter for a personal complaint. You would also have complaints regarding business activities, and therefore you would tailor it accordingly to those specifics of your company. Now we come to another kind of letter, and this is the apology letter. Letters of apology are something that we really don't like writing. We really feel that it's a difficult thing to do sometimes, and we struggle as to what kinds of words to put into this letter. But sometimes we do, in reality, have to write them. And so when we write an apology letter, it's important that we really sincerely say how sorry we are. And also, it's important that you value your relationship with the other party. Really, as soon as you can attend to writing this apology letter, if one is needed, and if you have said you would do so, you really do make sure that you write it and send it out as soon as possible. The sooner you can get it out, the better the relationship will be. If you delay, if you hold off, if you procrastinate and put it off to another day or another week, then that is going to make things worse. Do remember this point. When an apology letter is to be written, it needs to be written and sent out ASAP, as soon as possible. And also don't forget that depending on the nature of the letter, it can be written in a very friendly way or in a business letter format. It depends on the nature of the letter and the nature of the relationship. In a friendly or a personal apology letter, you can begin by saying how sorry you are to the recipient. And then the next step that you would take is to admit that you were wrong and that you take responsibility for your actions. This is an important step to take. Some people are very reluctant to admit that they are at fault, and they try to find all sorts of flowery or colourful ways using language to do that. Well, the best thing is to just be direct without being blunt. Don't be blunt and offensive, but just come straight out and admit that you were at fault. Your reader will admire you or respect you for that in the long term. The next point is that you should volunteer or ask if there's any way that you can help to resolve the situation that has happened. Are you able to lend a hand? Are you able to assist? So ask the person if there's any way that you can assist with that. Then the next step to take is to ensure that you will try to make certain that this situation will not happen again. That's an important thing to do. Reassure them that you will not let this particular problem come up again. And then to close off the letter, you should apologize briefly just once again in the closing. And that way you've opened with an apology and you've finished and closed with an apology, a brief one, just to remind the reader of the fact that you are sincere. And always remember, when writing a personal apology, it should really come from the heart and be sincere, and the reader can really gauge the level of your sincerity and your feelings from the style that you are using, from the words that you are using. So this is an important point not to overlook. Don't just rush it off in 5 minutes and not give your full attention to the details. People are very sensitive and they do see very clearly underneath the words that are written, so do remember that point. If you are writing from a business point of view, in a formal business apology letter, also again, you adopt the technique or the approach of putting your apology, your sincere apologies, into the first opening of the letter. Next, you would give an explanation as to what went wrong. You do need to clarify how things went wrong, how the situation came about, and give the specifics of that, so you are acknowledging that point, so that you are clear of what the issue is. And you're not hiding anything, you're not avoiding anything. It's very, very obvious as to what has happened. Then you should try to rectify the problem. Rectify it and find a solution. So here you have perhaps 4 paragraphs, depending on the extent or the seriousness of the problem. But the guideline is start with apologizing, explain what went wrong, try to come to a solution and rectify it, and tell them what you're going to do, and then close the letter off with, again, a brief apology. These points are quite simple to follow, being a personal or a professional apology letter. And once you follow them, hopefully you won't have to write too many of them, by the way, but once you follow them, then your structure, your format looks good, and your professionalism comes out in the way you are apologizing. Here we have in front of us a sample of an apology letter. And these samples, this one particularly, is going out from the customer service manager. And here we have Mr. Scott Mahoney. He is writing to Mr. Joseph Bickman. Mr. Joseph Bickman obviously is a customer. So he says, "Dear Mr. Bickman," in the very courteous and conventional salutation. He says, "I apologize for the mix-up of order such and such." He opened with the apology. He didn't say, "I am so very sorry, by the way." He said, "I apologize for the specific," which is a much more professional way of beginning an apology. He is explaining that we have just implemented a new system that still has a few problems or bugs to be worked out. And he's honestly saying here that they did, although they had these problems, they did fix his order and sent it out this morning. So he's come up with the solution. This is all in one full paragraph. Here we have our 3 paragraphs, and we can see the apology very clearly, as I said, in the first paragraph. The second paragraph talks about what went wrong and the solution, and what they're going to give that particular customer. Here they're going to give him a $25 gift certificate. And in the final paragraph, in the closing, once again, I would like to apologize for the mix-up in your order and any inconvenience this may have caused you. These are standard phrases in reality, but they are also very nicely written. Once again, I would like to is a very nice way of closing up. I would like to apologize, blah, blah, blah. And signing off sincerely who he is and where he's from. So this is just a standard sample that you can see works very, very well. And the customer should feel happy when he receives it. He's got his apology, he's got a solution, there has been acknowledgement of a problem, and he is being said goodbye to in a very, very pleasant way, and I'm sure he will be a repeat customer. Next we come to the sample of a personal letter of apology. And there is a difference, as I said and I explained in this particular part of the program, that there are differences in being a personal apology and a professional apology. Here we see a letter written to someone, and it's a simple letter just saying, I'm sorry, not I apologize for. Here the language is used differently because it's perhaps friend to friend. I'm sorry for forgetting about our lunch date. It was my fault. I was so busy and it must have slipped my mind. This is the reason why it happened. The solution is coming up. How about I treat you to lunch next week? With some details, the date and the place, which is a very good and clear solution. Just like in the business letter, there is a solution that is specific and clear, so the reader knows what it is. I've marked this date in my planner so I won't forget about it, reassuring her. She is reassuring her friend that she won't forget it this time. Once again, here she's saying, I'd just like to apologize again for missing the lunch date. And she's used the word apologize, not saying I am sorry again. Sometimes when you say sorry too much, sorry, if you say sorry too much, it really ends up with no meaning. So if you use it once in the beginning of your letter, then that is good. And the next time you want to close with being sorry, then you can change to using the word apologize. And notice too, here they haven't said very, very sorry or really, really apologize. Try not to add these to your apology because they really are not necessary. You don't have to over-apologize or be over-sorry for things. The words as written, politely and courteously, are enough. So there we have apology letters, both in a business sense and a formal sense. So do use these guidelines as you begin to work with your letters. Next we come to another important letter, requesting a letter of recommendation. You may need a letter of recommendation from someone. It could be for various reasons that you need a letter of recommendation, perhaps as a reference. Perhaps someone needs to see that you are, your section or your department is being very timely with their deliveries of a product, and therefore you need to get a letter of recommendation highlighting that fact when you're trying to find a new customer. There are other reasons that you would need a letter of recommendation. Even if you are applying for a job, you need a reference or a letter of recommendation from your current employer or someone who knows you. It's important to know that when you ask someone for a letter of recommendation, that you consider very carefully the person you are asking. So how you approach them and how you talk to them is very, very important. So do be very careful in the words that you use. Always make sure that you ask for letters early on rather than too late, because otherwise you will find that you will not give enough time to your professor or to your employer or to the department that oversees your division's work. You may not give them enough time to write it. So don't ask them just one day ahead of time. Ask them in advance. If you are leaving your job and you're seeking a professional letter, ask for the letter of recommendation whenever you leave your job as well. Not just 6 months down the track when you've left, because that letter of recommendation may be able to help you when you're applying for a new job. Also, assist the person who's writing this letter of recommendation with as much material as possible so that they know who you are and that they can write very clearly about you. You need to give them information that will help the letter include your plans for the future perhaps, or your strengths or your strong points and your experiences that you want to be presented in the letter. If you are asking someone to write on behalf of your department and write about the praise of the department and the good work the department does, then you need to give them examples of that good work, of the things that you are doing, which is why you need that recommendation letter. So give them the information, give them some specifics. And be honest about the information you give, by the way. Give real examples, real specifics. If you sort of embellish it a little and it's not really full of the facts, you just want to make yourself look good, for example, then be careful. That will catch up with you later on. It will backfire. So do make sure all of the information that you give the writer of that recommendation, all of the information should be factual. They may not want to do it unless it is very factual, by the way, and they should not write anything that is not really true about you. So remember that point as well, because they are either your friend or your colleague or your employer or your higher divisions, and they need to be able to be happy with what they're saying about you or your department. It makes you look as though you have thought out the process. And also you could give them a guideline as to what needs to be followed or what you should provide them with, etc. Then once your letter has been written and it has been sent out, you should send a thank you note to that person who has recommended you. You can also thank them in person with a phone call, which is actually probably the preferred way of doing things. But I do think if it is in a more business sense, or if it is your professor or your employer, then it's nice to put something in writing, just a thank you note to them to show that you do really appreciate all the things that they have done for you. Here again, your professionalism is being seen. The way you behave and your courteous approach is being seen by the reader or the writer of that letter. And that is paramount when it comes to having excellent writing skills in either business or in a personal sense. Now let's not forget the fact that even though you at times may receive letters or want letters of recommendation from other people, you might have to write a letter of recommendation yourself. And that becomes an important task because somebody else is relying on you. They are needing your assistance and they value your input. And therefore, if you are requested to write a letter of recommendation, you need to make up your mind about whether, firstly, you have a good relationship with that person, or whether you think you should decline, depending on how you think about that person. It could be that that person thinks a lot about you, but maybe you don't really feel comfortable in writing something about them. Perhaps, for example, they have been a poor employee or not a good student if you are in academic circles, and therefore you don't know them very well as well. That's one other thing that might cause you to decline. So do remember you have a choice. If, on the other hand, you feel that you do know that employee well and you do feel good about writing that recommendation for them, it's a good idea to ask for additional information, or sometimes just meet them or conduct a small interview with them so that you have very good information you can put into your letter. Don't write things blindly. Don't do things based on your memory. It's all right to try to do that, but it would be better if you can make sure that you have facts and information very recently from that person. It could be you may not have seen them for 2 or 3 years, but they've rung you up and wanted you to write this. You remember that you met them and you try to write on your memory. I would suggest then meet them. Have a chat about what they want. And that is the professional thing to do in writing a letter of recommendation. That's the first step you can take. Next up, when you put it together, when you've got your information together and you know what you've got to write about and to whom, then follow the business letter format. You can leave out the inside address if it's unknown, but unless the name of the person is given to you, you should address it to the standard address to whom it may concern. That is quite acceptable if you don't know who that person is, and many letters of recommendation get written that way. Also be sure to include your phone number or email so that the reader can contact you with any questions. That's very, very important. So these are 2 very important elements to the letter of recommendation. So let's look at the writing of it. Let's look at the paragraphs one by one. And this may happen quite a lot. You are in business and you have staff who do move on. It could be that they need your letter of recommendation, so help them out in your professional sense when you can, and of course when you wish to. So the first paragraph should start by stating your relationship to the actual applicant or to the person and how long you have known them. You should also put there your professional position at the company you are in or the school, depending on what the nature of this letter is, and any additional information about yourself that will help build up your credibility as a good reference. So this is the introductory paragraph. It's about who you are and the relationship. The second paragraph, this paragraph should focus on building up the applicant or the person who the recommendation is about. It should give an overview of them and their strengths and qualities. And this is important too. You need to show here that you know who they are. You don't want to look ridiculous or foolish by not having enough information. And you don't want to look like a stranger either, because that's just simply not professional. The reader will get to know if you know this person well or not, just by how you put this information into your letter. And then the next 2 or 3 paragraphs should focus perhaps on the single quality of that person with examples of how they show that particular quality. or what it is the nature of this particular recommendation and why you're recommending them. That is important here, that you can build the person's qualities up in this or these two particular paragraphs. When you come to the closing paragraph, it should go over again that the applicant or the person would be a good employee, and that any additional comments that you may want to bring up, you can add in here as well. They will be a good employee for your company, and I'd just like to add blah, 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 blah. You can also write about why you think that person would fit with the company or the position as well. Not just why they would be a good employee, maybe they are good because they're very trustworthy, etc., but also how would they fit with the company. Maybe they would bring greater productivity because they're very diligent, etc. And then let the reader know that you yourself can be contacted if they have any additional questions. So there we have several paragraphs in this letter of recommendation. A letter of recommendation is quite a serious thing, by the way, because it can have serious consequences. It could mean whether a person is employed or not. So think of it that way and view it very, very seriously when someone does ask you for that letter of recommendation. It needs to be full, it needs to have the right information to have the right effect on the reader. So let's take a look at a sample here. A sample letter of recommendation. As you can see, this is addressed to whom it may concern. Very standard and very, very acceptable. The format also is to the left side, which makes it very easy to follow, appealing on the eye. And we begin with the first paragraph. This is a very nice way of opening a letter of recommendation. It says here that it is with great pleasure that I am recommending this person to you, Rose Berdinger, to you. I am the head sales manager at this company, and Rose has been under my supervision from November to August such and such as a saleswoman. So here in the first opening paragraph, we can see the specifics about who you are and your relationship with Rose. And also it's a very pleasant way of opening a letter. It's very nice English usage and very, very polite. The second paragraph goes on to saying how Rose would be a great asset to any company. It talks about the fact that she is very bright and she has great enthusiasm and passion for her work. Here, these are the qualities of Rose. And it then goes on in the next paragraph to talk about how she can work well, not just her qualities, but how she works well. She's a quick learner, and evidence of that is in the first 2 weeks that she joined that company, she had learned all product names, features, how they work, etc. He has here highlighted her specific abilities and capabilities with regard to work. He's compared how normally an employee would take 2 months to do this, but she did it in the first 2 weeks. So here he is highlighting how her capabilities are very, very important. The next paragraph goes on to say how she has won a top award at his particular company and how successful she has been. So here it's highlighting also that no one has ever achieved this as Rose has achieved this award. So he is really highlighting her particular uniqueness in this third paragraph. And finally, as he begins to close up, he talks about how he believes that Rose will be an excellent fit for your company. This is a standard phrase, but it's also very pertinent and a very important phrase to mention as the closing comes. He says that she has been nothing but an exemplary employee, an outstanding employee. Very short and sweet, but very, very to the point. And he says, any further questions, feel free to contact me. When we say feel free, it means do not hesitate at all. You could also use that phraseology as well. If you have any further questions, do not hesitate to contact me at da-da-da. I'll be happy to answer any questions you have. This is a very polite and courteous way to end the letter of recommendation. Sincerely, and then the name, etc. So this letter of recommendation is following the standard format and the way that we put together all those components of a letter. It is formal in that it is very expressive and courteous, and it gives a good image to the reader. It shows that Peter Zigard, the head sales manager of Rose's company, is certainly a professional head of sales, and he really does come across as having a very good image. So now we see a sample of a letter of recommendation. If indeed you are called upon to write this kind of letter, then please ensure that you follow some of these guidelines. It will help you, and you will be able to fall into the guidelines very easily and produce a very good end product. Next we come to writing a letter of interest. We can also say that a letter of interest is called a prospecting letter. It's a type of cover letter in a way, and when you write it, you are searching for an opportunity. You are also searching perhaps for a golden job opportunity. And it is very important that this kind of letter is going to make a very first impression on your reader, and therefore you need to make a very good impression on that prospective employer or prospective customer, etc. So letters of interest are written to express your interest in working for a particular company in a specific field. Your letter may be written either in a response to a job opening or just to investigate possible employment. As I said, your letter of interest needs to create a very good first impression, and that is what the aim of this really is. Human resources departments receive dozens of letters of interest every week or every day, depending on how large that company is. And so therefore, to make your letter stand out from the crowd is important, and you can use the following tips to do exactly that. Before you write, you need to do your research, do your homework, we say. And that means find out information about the background of the company and get familiar with their products and their services. It would also help you to find out the name of the person that you are actually writing to, the person who does the actual hiring for that particular company. And use the usual addresses in the format of the letter, and if you don't know their name, you can use to whom it may concern, or dear sir or madam. Even though it is best to find out the proper name of the person, you can get away with using that particular introduction. So find out a bit about the company, then address your letter to the person using their name or to whom it may concern, etc., and then start your introductory paragraph. You can start it with the reason why you are interested in pursuing employment with this company. And try not to start the first sentence with I. We have a sample to follow, and we'll explain why this is important. Also, explain what caused you to inquire. Was it an ad? Was it in a media article? Was it an interview? Or somebody referred you to them? Explain why you are approaching that particular company. In the next paragraph, or paragraphs, you can give examples of your qualifications. And also here, you need to explain why you would be great for that company, why you'd be a good asset. Being a good asset is the normal way of saying this. Illustrate your achievements, your strengths, and why you are professional. Stay away here from putting in lots of abbreviations about your qualifications. Really state the field that you're in. That is more specific. If you have letters which go after your name, then put that in your resume. That's where it really is more appropriate. And you can direct the reader of your particular letter of interest to your resume that you are enclosing. In the final paragraph that you are writing, you can thank the person for their time in considering you as a new employee. And then again, go ahead and indicate when you might be available to contact them, follow up your letter, etc. And also don't forget to let the reader know how to contact you. That's very important as well. So here we have some guidelines to follow when you're expressing interest. You're expressing interest in employment somewhere else, or you may wish to move to another division of your own company. So you would then modify the different contents of those paragraphs accordingly. Like any business letter, and this is something to note, use the standard A4 size paper and follow the business letter format. Even if it's a cover letter or an apology letter or a complaint letter, as we've gone through. With any business letter, follow that format and you won't get into trouble. It will keep you in the usual format and it'll be easier for you to work out how to proceed with your writing. Keep your letter short and really keep it to no more than a single page, if possible. Now this takes some doing. Certainly you need to reread and relook at what you have written and try to cut out unnecessary things. You may need somebody to help you do that if you're not quite sure, and that's not bad advice to take. So keep your letter short and no more than a single page if you can, depending on the nature of what you're writing about. So do check it thoroughly for spellers, for grammar, and to be sure that it addresses each point you want to make. Remember, when you're writing out your framework, your outline of what you have to match in your letter, this is where you can do that. Be sure it addresses each point that you want to make. So it's a good thing to start off with a draft. When you have your draft and you've written that out in outline format, then you can check off and tick off how you've answered all the things that you need to put into your letter. Don't forget those simple guidelines we went through earlier. Here we are with a sample letter of interest. So let's take a closer look. This is written by Linda Jones, and she is sending this to DTI, that is a company, and she is putting attention to Jen Carlson. So she has the name rather than to whom it may concern. So having the name is a lot better if you can do it and find it. So she has said, "Dear Miss Carlson," which is the correct salutation to begin with. In the first part, She says, your recent advertisement in the Herald, and she's specifying the name of the paper, made it clear that customer satisfaction is important to your company. In addition, my close friend, Paula Chavez, who is already working at your company, suggested that my special talents might benefit your customer service department. So here she's introducing herself, saying how she got to know that this job was on offer, and talking a little bit about how she might be a very good asset to the company, straight up. So straight away, Miss Carlson is understanding why Linda Jones is writing to her. In the next paragraph, the writer goes on to say that part of her success is because she puts high value on personal integrity and representing her company in an ethical and respectable manner. So here she's highlighting her strengths, the good points about her, which raise her up, she thinks, above the level of most other people. That's why she is perfect for the job. Added to this are her other capabilities, her professional capabilities, in the way that she's very diligent and she's very much attention to detail is her orientation. She's very focused on providing value for service and also to quality customer service. So here she is highlighting her strengths about herself. So this is the second part where she talks about her personal qualities and also about her professional capabilities on the job. She's gone on to add something further. And remember, you can add, to fill up that A4 page, add another paragraph there. She's also hard, she's a smart working person, she's very motivated, she's a self-starter who works equally well in a team environment or as an individual. So finally, in her closing, she's very to the point and she's going to follow up by saying, I will call you on June 15 to answer any questions about this letter. And hopefully that there will be the scheduling for an interview. She's given the option here also in the closing to say that if Ms. Carlson prefers to call her or contact her, then she's given her contact details. Finally, she says, thank you for considering her qualifications. Sincerely. So here we can see the first, the second, the third and fourth and the final closing paragraph of a very professionally worded letter of interest. It reflects professionalism upon that girl, the woman writing the letter. Ms. Carlson, who is involved in customer service, is definitely going to see that the style of writing of this particular writer is professional, and it displays a very respectful image as well. This is important because this is the first impression that Ms. Carlson is going to get of Linda Jones. And first impressions are very, very important, as you well know, in the communication process. We remember and we base our thinking about a person solely on the first impressions we get. So they are very powerful indeed. So a letter of interest is important, whether you are writing a letter of interest to a prospective employer or whether you are writing it to a new customer base that you want to be involved with and to attract. All of these types of letters need to be written in the proper and the correct way. Indeed, your company or yourself, Indeed, your image is going to be shown immediately through the words that you say and the way that you write. So do remember the guidelines we bring up every time in this program. Keep to those guidelines, follow the format, follow how things are set out. Look at all the elements and list your paragraphs, outline your draft. Measure whether you have actually answered what is required of you to mention in your letter and tick them off as a kind of checklist. Thank you very much for paying attention to this part of our business letter writing program. Thank you, and I will see you in the next session.